Hello, everyone. Welcome to the podcast, the founder-led sales podcast that delves into the unique journey of founders who lead their company sales efforts, have exited their company sales efforts, or potentially are now looking to step back from the day-to-day sales process. In each episode, we explore the challenges and strategies of transitioning away from being the primary driver of sales, allowing these leaders to focus on scaling and growing their businesses. Today, we welcome Will Pearson. He's the co-founder of Scalaroo, a life cycle marketing studio. Scalaroo helps B2C companies send better emails through a variety of services and technologies. Outside of work, Will loves to spend time with his two young children on the beaches of Charleston, South Carolina, while attempting to stay fit through running and tennis. Will, welcome. Good to have you here.
Thank you. Good to be here. And I have to correct you on the pronunciation right away. It's Scalero, not Scalaroo.
Scalero. Well, I told you at the beginning that we're not going to edit this unless there was a serious error. Are you happy to carry on as is?
Keep going. We actually have some of our swag is misspellings and mispronunciations of our name scratched out with the right one there. And Scalaroo is the number one
I'm sure.
mispronunciation. So you were right there. I love it.
I mean,
Okay.
it's a pretty good mispronunciation, right? It's still at least in the right area.
Yeah. Yeah. Sometimes I wonder if that should just be the name of the company.
Well, I'm afraid
Nice.
this is not a branding podcast. So you'll have to kind of discuss that elsewhere.
Oh.
Cool. All
Well,
right.
well, yeah, really good to have you here. I think just to kind of kick stuff off, perhaps you could tell us a little bit about what's happening at the moment with regards to sales, your position in it, how you're feeling about it. Just kind of paint the scene for us a little bit.
We have around 50 clients right now that are on a monthly retainer. So that's typically what I'm selling. 3 months commitment and then go month to month after that on our services. That's standard. Sometimes we'll go longer, sometimes shorter. Sometimes after a period of time, we'll do a longer contract. So at that volume, where I am right now is still very much involved in everything, partially by choice, partially by need. Um, we we generate most of our leads through referrals, and so there's a few reasons why I stay involved. One is typically the referral is right to me, so I don't want to just pass that off immediately. And then secondly, there's not a massive amount of volume. If I had 80 referrals coming in every week, obviously I can't take 80 calls. But because the referrals are super warm, very obvious, what the need is, I can take it myself and kind of handle the process um, pretty seamlessly at this point. So I consider myself, kind of the leader of sales here at Scalero. And if there's one thing I would fix, it's to have more leads so that, I could share some responsibility. My co-founder does help out quite a bit, but, I think we're both thinking eventually when we have enough leads, we will get more people on the team. But for now, we're able to handle everything ourselves.
And just for, I guess, for clarification purposes, when we say sales, that's for new revenue. I mean, 50 clients on retainer, I would imagine the growth of existing revenue is also a key component. You mentioned that you're doing all of that as well, or there's someone else driving that part?
For the most part, yeah, we're doing that as well. It hasn't been a huge focus of the business. We mainly focus on new clients. Um, when the conversation comes up to add revenue, because we're largely a service-based company, it is because we are servicing more than projected. So often the conversation is uh, a bit more complicated, where it's not necessarily upselling a service. It's okay, we're actually doing more than we signed up for, so let's either scale back or charge the client more. So we don't necessarily think of it as like upselling opportunities as much as maintaining our margin. That being said, there's probably an opportunity, to figure out some additional upselling and services around that, but it just hasn't been something we've focused on yet.
And what, I guess, great that you're still in it and your co-founder Outsell as well. And you said, part by design, but part by, kind of choice as well. I mean, are there aspects of it that are challenging that you're struggling with at the moment? Are there parts that you're thinking about, moving off, and what parts are those?
Yeah, as I mentioned before, there aren't infinite amount of leads with what we do. We're in a pretty niche space. You have to be um, typically a B2C type of company with a pretty massive email list to like really get a lot out of our services. So it does limit our potential audience. So I think the one thing that I haven't figured out, that I don't know if I'm the one to do it, is how to generate more leads that aren't warm necessarily from the start. Uh, how do we get our name out there more to more of those companies that are fairly large and likely have a team already thinking about email marketing, but that we can enhance what they're doing for a pretty good price. So I think I'm really good at handling referrals, but I'm not really good at generating leads, and that's something I think about often, and think through different methods to do so.
Will, I think when we talk on this podcast and generally in any type of entrepreneurial community to founders involved in B2B selling, I think probably the number one thing in allowing them to exit is to increase the volume of leads
Mm-hmm.
coming through. So what you've said really resonates. Have you, perhaps you could share, maybe, I don't know if you've, outside of referrals, maybe you've done things that have worked, haven't worked. I'm also really interested to know a little bit about, you mentioned that you've got a really tight niche that you're focusing on. Um, and which, by the way, I love, and I think is super important, particularly when you're trying to generate more leads. Um, Perhaps you could, I'd be interested to know about anything that you've done in the past that's worked or hasn't worked in terms of lead generation. And maybe you could just touch a little bit more on that niche and just explain how that came together. And if your thoughts are moving forward to keep remaining focused on that niche.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, to answer the second question first, we will remain focused on this niche. We've explored some other things. We've even launched a couple other services. Ultimately, have come back to what we do best, which is this lifecycle marketing space. And there's a few reasons for it. I mean, there's a comfort level from previous experience between my co-founder and I in this space, and we've also just found that the need is growing for this. So we work within the tools that our clients have in this world. So you can think of tools like HubSpot, Braze, Salesforce Marketing Cloud, Iterable, Customer.io. I can name Klaviyo. I can name dozens of them. They have gotten more complex over recent years, and that doesn't seem to be slowing down. And for that reason, companies need to hire expertise to manage the tools. And a lot of times that might be internally, a lot of times that might be externally with us. So we see this market potential growing and growing. And our advantage of having launched in 2019 when the tools were complex, but not super complex, is that we are learning. We have a team now, 30 people that are truly experts in this space. I think we have a chance to continue to scale up within it. And then as far as the types of things we've tried in the past, so the tools that I mentioned, they are our number one lead generation tool right now. So, for example, Iterable, if you're familiar with that tool, and if you're not, it's a marketing automation tool, essentially. When they have customers who are struggling to use their platform, the Iterable will reach out to us and say, "Hey, one of our customers is struggling. Can you go in there and help them and help them send better emails to simplify it as much as possible?" So those referrals come in, and they're super warm. It's super obvious what the need is, and we've got that sales process down pretty well at this point. What also makes that challenging is, I named like 8 tools right off the bat, but there's dozens more. How do we pick the right ones to partner with? And that's something I struggle with sometimes. There's often a chicken or the egg situation with them. So if I reach out to a tool that has never heard of us and we've never used them before, I say, let's partner. We'll learn your tool. You'll learn about us. You send us leads. We'll send you leads. Nobody really budges until there's actually leads being passed on either way. So you just sort of meet, spend time together. You do a dinner, you do a presentation, but ultimately you might just be wasting time and money until there's real traction there. So I don't want to do that 30 times over, right? I want to do it for the ones that really make a difference to our business. So that's something I'm trying to figure out. That's the high point of partnerships. That's the low point of partnerships. And then a couple other things, to mention. We've done a lot of cold email and cold calling through partners. We've hired agencies or individuals to do that. We've had a couple really nice success stories from that. And otherwise we've had, complete flops. So like, it's similar to saying, many of the leads are warm. Even on outbound, when leads come in, they've been super warm because they read our email and they're like, "Oh, that's a service I need. I'm struggling with that right now. Fix it for me." Otherwise, we get ignored. That's been my experience so far. I'm sure there are plenty of other ways to do it. I know you all are very, very good at, kind of working through um, the whole cycle to send relevant messages. But that just hasn't been successful for us. So, we're thinking of other ways to generate leads, using ads or going to conferences and things like that. We've dabbled in it, but haven't really invested in it like we have with partnerships.
Mm. It's very interesting. Yeah. I mean, sending messages is only a tiny, tiny part of what we do. What we actually focus on a
Right.
lot more is how do you actually have real life engagements with people? Ideally in
Mhm.
person, but potentially, but sometimes, online as well, but ideally in person. Just as a quick side note, I was talking to someone in the B2E space, and she sent me a report on conferences in the United States. It is now at its highest level ever. So obviously it took a huge drop in COVID, but they are seeing a massive kind of, I guess, resurgence in the people visiting. I think, you know, particularly in the last 6 to 8 months, and certainly we've seen it with our clients, there does tend to be this need to reconnect on a human to human level.
Mhm.
Very quickly, I'm going to hand back to Henry. You mentioned a company that sends you leads called, is it Iterate? You formed a partnership with
Iterable.
Iterable.
Mhm.
How did, very, very quickly, how did that partnership come about? Can you recall how it all started? I'd be really interested to hear that story.
Yeah, most of our partnerships that we have typically started with a shared customer who found us both independently. So that might mean that somebody was already using the tool that was in my network or my co-founder's network, and they reach out and they're like, "Hey, we're using this, we're struggling, can you help us with it?" So then we start working on it, and then we reach out to Iterable. We say, "Hey, we just turned this upset customer into a happy customer for you. Let's
Wow,
talk. Let's keep this momentum going with more of your customers." So of the partners that we have, most of them started in that way somehow.
got you. Thank you.
So you mentioned like in the referrals, you said, well, I can't really pass them off because they're referrals to me. And I understand that to an extent. But I just want to explore it a little bit. So the partners that you have, like obviously you own that partner relationship at the moment, and you're having to invest in that partnership. And as we know, Outsell, it's a lot of a lot of work and a lot of time. So I really understand, having to drive that at the moment. At the point that the referral comes in from the partner, and maybe one or two have come in, I can understand you leading on. What's the kind of trepidation of not following perhaps a process that people will often do where they say, yeah, great, let me add whoever into that meeting, and then it kind of just slowly transitions, and it's like what's stopping you from making that move at the moment?
For one, I really enjoy it. It's one of my preferred things to do is hopping on these calls with prospects and seeing what kind of challenges they're facing and how we can position ourselves to solve it. It's almost like a little puzzle where whatever they're describing is unique. I've never heard someone describe it in that way, but then when you think about it, it's actually a very common problem that most of our clients are facing, and we have our set of solutions that can solve it. So I really enjoy that. Those are the conversations I look forward to the most when I look at my calendar every day. Um, so that's one. And I think, as a founder, you want to get out of the things you don't like doing, or that you can find people that are better than you at those things. And for now, I like doing it, and I don't know if someone can do it better than me at this stage. Also, because I have not set that up for anybody to do. We don't have. I'm sure if you looked under the hood, you'd say, well, you're not using the right CRM, you don't have the right tooling in place, you're not following up, at the proper cadence, and we don't really have a strong playbook. There's a lot of just the founder instinct going on here, for better or for worse. So I know that's work that needs to be done at some point, to pass it off, and I just um,
Well,
haven't been
well,
willing to do that.
I think the title of our podcast might be misleading you a little bit. So so um when we onboard clients, the first thing they say to us is we need to get out of this. I want to leave, I want to exit the sales process.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we then turn around and say, well, actually, what about if you were just having, because we're in B2B, most of our clients are selling, high average contract items. They don't need to make many sales a month, sometimes not many a year, sometimes three or four deals a year. So if we turn around and say, well, what about if you just had to have four conversations a month with really high value prospects that were a perfect fit for you. They'd be like, oh no, I'd love that. I'd absolutely love it. I'd be happy to do that forever. So
Mm-hmm.
Henry and I actually spend a lot of the time actually pushing back and trying to restructure what they're doing to put it into a place that they are able to have those conversations and enjoy those conversations. And also, it's funny hearing you talk about the fact that you love it. I just posted an article, a video on LinkedIn. I think it was yesterday or the day before. Have a quick look at it. It's only like 90 seconds long. And I say, if as a founder you don't truly, um, if you don't really love having sales calls, I would question whether you actually really love your product. And
Mm-hmm.
because if you really love your product and you know it makes a real difference, then most people are actually very happy to talk about it. As you just said, it's fun hearing about how you can help people with their problems, right? So
Mm-hmm.
I hear you. I do all of the sales for Outsell still, and I love jumping on calls because I like that problem solving aspect as well.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. The area that I've been able to exit from in the business is the client work, actually executing on email platforms for our clients. That's been a big goal of mine, is to not do that, because I like the selling much more, and I think my skill set kind of better serves to be thinking about growth as opposed to execution. Whereas my co-founder is really strong at execution and enjoys that, and still does some of that as well. And that's the conversation we have, and and understand from each other that's the setup. And so, yeah, I've found people that are really strong at execution, better than me at that. And for sales, I don't necessarily feel like we have to do that right now.
It's funny, isn't it? The title on Rich, you said our clients when they come in, it's all about I want to exit. It's actually not. It's not like that black and white, right? There's this fear hanging over them. Well, one, there's the kind of all the admin stuff, and they're done with that, and they're like, I don't want to do that anymore, which is relatively easy to solve. The second part of it is this kind of fear, which is that they've generated most of their business and their revenue from their network, and that has started to stall. And it's a bit like, I'm happy to do the stuff, but I'm worried about my capabilities. So it's not even like, oh, okay, we'll sort this out, we'll exit next week. It's a bit like, a better way of framing it in mind is like, I need to know that there's a growth strategy that isn't 100% reliant on me, because that's the thing that causes a lot of the stress.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Is that the name of our new podcast?
I don't know what the name is, but there's something in that.
A growth strategy that means you won't be stuck in your business for life.
Yeah. No stress growth.
Yeah.
No, I mean, to your point, I've the parts I've solved for are the ones that, again, I'm either not good at or didn't want to do anymore. So for example, a couple of years ago, if we had a lead come in, I'd have a 30-minute conversation, and then it would be time for a proposal. And I wouldn't get to the proposal for 2 or 3 days because, I'm busy. I don't want to do it. It takes too much time. So, I found somebody who's really good at doing that for us, and they can, turn it around in one day. And then I just have to, edit it. And sometimes, usually I don't even have to edit it. Right. So yeah, solving for those parts of the puzzle and, kind of, when I say I lead the sales process, it's mostly I take the call, and then I kind of think about how we're going to, orchestrate that and what the price will be. But then, a lot of the other work is being done by somebody else.
There's 2 questions I have in mind, and I can't decide which one to answer. So I'm just going to ask you both, and ask both, and you can decide. So one is about, at what point does your current situation become unsustainable? And the other part of it is about, I guess, what, on the kind of lead generation point of view, where you want more leads, like, okay, how does that affect your role within sales? And do you think of that as like founder-led growth? Is that a way that you're going, where it's like, you need to do more, you need to go out and hustle more and go to more conferences? Or when you start thinking about lead generation, does that step outside of your remit and you start thinking it is about a kind of company solution?
Yeah. So where does it stop? I'm hopeful. We're about 1 year away from that. So, to your point earlier, Richard, on just the number of leads and number of closes, our goal for this year, 2025, is to land 4 new clients per month, knowing that roughly 1 will churn each month. So essentially a net, +3 every month is what we're looking for. That will put us at a level that I think will be too much, for me to maintain. And I think it will, but it also is a, significant milestone for us from a revenue and profit standpoint, that would make me, very proud. So I think we're getting there. But I think we need to increase the leads to hit those numbers. And so, to your second point, second question of, do we, does it need to be me, or is it, are there other ways to do it? I have let it go a little bit that it needs to be me. And also it's a little bit of the protection of my time. So I mentioned, or Richard mentioned in the intro, that, I have 2 little kids right now. I don't really have any interest in just being on the road, going to conferences and, having a ton of conversations that may not lead anywhere. I want to be really thoughtful in who I'm speaking to and when and why. And I think what we have found here, knowing that partnerships is such a key for us, that I don't have to manage all the partnerships. It's not that there is a little bit more of a playbook there that I think we have been able to put in place, and we do have some people that can help and that do help with partnerships, and meeting with other companies and maybe showing up to conferences, and having a hosting a dinner or whatever that might be. Like, we do have people that are capable of that. Their role is not necessarily head of sales or anything like that, but it's kind of included in other things they're doing. So that's how I'm thinking about it. Yeah, it will be me out there sometimes, but not all the time, and it's not necessarily putting my face out over and over again. I think there's a lot more strategic ways that we've seen success in the past.
Yeah, it's what I guess it's one of the areas I find really interesting. Is same thing, like when the clients come in, it's a little bit like if they have used themselves as the lever for growth for the last couple of years, it's then very hard to transition away to something totally different, right? And it's about, well, how do you put that support system in place so that they do get to spend time with their kids? I've got 2 young kids as well, but also do all the work and build the systems and the process and the machine that still gets the benefit of them, but build something that, and I guess this is what we're talking about, right? So they can start to see like a way out of it, because if you transition too hard away from that, then it's quite tough because you lose a lot of the personality, and then you're reliant on a very, very strong brand or a lot of the kind of hygienic marketing exercises, which are also really hard to use to generate traction within the B2B market. So it's a careful balance. I think what we often find, and it comes back to, is always about, well, what energizes people. People will often say, I don't want to go and sit on a plane and go to conferences all around the US, but if we can find a viewpoint and a kind of brand point that I'm happy to defend and be passionate about talking about, I'm happy to do like X amount of series of events or summits or lunch and learns or master classes on that. Like, that sustains the interest. But if you get that part wrong, and it's, I think this is a lot of people do, is they'll do the things they think they should be doing rather than the things that they enjoy doing, then yeah, it's very hard to get that to work.
Yeah, one thing we're doing this year, my co-founder and I, is we're going to some conferences, but sometimes we're not even buying a ticket to the show. We're just going to be in the right place, and that allows us to a couple of things. One is, what do we like to do? Well, we like to sit together and work, and we kind of jam on what we're doing, or we got a lot of stuff to do, and he and I find an office and we can spend 4 hours together. That's super valuable. We don't usually get to sit together. We live on opposite ends of the coast. So we can do that, accomplish a lot that way. And then we have some scheduled dinners and happy hours and lunches and things, with clients or prospects that are planned ahead of time, or with our partners. A lot of them are big tech companies with huge budgets, so they're able to, throw a nice dinner and kind of put our name in there because we throw in a little bit of money with them, and that goes a long way. Kind of an intimate setting where we can essentially explain ourselves and what we do, but we're not necessarily in the conference, at a booth, handing out stuff, getting, going crazy. Like, that's not my personality.
No.
It's not something we really enjoy doing. So we're trying to find that balance of being out there, but, doing what we really like, which is what you're saying.
Just one more on this quickly, and I'll pass back to Rich. But are you quite, I guess, this, I want to choose a better word, but I can't think of one, passive in terms of like your partners? Obviously you're looking after partners and doing whatever you do there, but are you doing things like kind of old school, like black book agency things, where every 3 months you might look at a specific partner and look at how to actually kind of proactively get them to drive referrals, or is it just waiting for them to do it?
Somewhere in the middle. I think we've typically waited. We're not waiting as much anymore. We have some different ideas. There's sometimes we use the word infiltrate the partners, and that means just get to know a lot of people at the organization and talk about what we do with them and just get them to trust us and understand us. So in a way, we're doing these sales tactics, but less so with prospects and more with the partners, because we
Yeah.
think that's where the leads will come from. So it is fairly strategic at this point. I think we're getting better at it, but it took a few years to understand that.
Yeah, nice.
Um, on a side note, you guys have both got young kids. I've got 4 kids, and they're all teenagers. So I'm always volunteering to go to any conference I can get to. So, different stages of life may throw up different opportunities. All right. Well, thank you. I'd like to go into the rapid fire session, if that's okay. So we're going to ask you a series of questions. You answer. We're not going to comment. We're just going to move on to the next one. You ready?
Okay, let's go.
Okay. Pitch your business in 30 seconds.
If you have a large email list and you need to send really nice emails or SMS or push notifications, hire us. We'll figure it out. We understand how your data is set up. We understand how to design and create emails. We'll make sure that your subscribers are getting the right messaging.
The first sale you ever made.
Yes, the first sale I ever made. I still don't understand how it happened. I was at a friend's wedding in Italy, got a referral, hopped on a call with the worst Wi-Fi you can imagine. It was in wine country somewhere. Um, had no idea what I was talking about. We had been around for about 10 days as a company, and left that thinking like, well, it's a good experience. Let's go have fun at this wedding. And after the wedding, I opened my inbox to see that they were ready to move forward. $6,000 a month contract, which felt insane at the time. A nice brand, a brand that ended up taking off, and is kind of towards the $1 billion valuation at this point. Not working with them anymore. We had a great run for a few years, and yeah, that was gave me a big confidence boost. Right, you have no idea what you're doing, and you still were able to land a nice brand.
Awesome. What do you love about sales?
I love just understanding from trying to decipher, what well, I can say that again. I want help understanding what people's problems are and trying to decipher what they're saying into language that I use. So what I mean by that is, everybody comes to us with some kind of problem with lifecycle marketing, but they describe it in a way that makes sense to them and might not make sense to other people. But ultimately, it comes down to the same, 4 or 5 things that most of our clients struggle with, and being able to put that all together is really fun.
What don't you like about sales?
Yeah, I mean, I like to be friendly, kind, and understanding to people, and sometimes I feel like I have to put that aside, and just follow up when they don't want to be reached out to, and ask them questions they don't want to be asked, and sometimes I get a little uncomfortable with that. Um, so, and that typically happens because someone has gone a little bit unpredictable. They haven't followed the typical cycle I expect, um, and I don't like trying to figure that out and maybe change tactics and get a little more aggressive than I want to be. For me, it's like I'll often just say, "Oh, I don't really want the sale anyway," and I think it's just kind of me coping with a a prospect who didn't follow exactly what I wanted them to.
Your top sales tip.
I think act like a human when you're talking to somebody. Um, I think some really trained salespeople would have very specific actions to mention here, and I've heard those. I'm not a trained salesperson. I've even resisted some official trainings, but I've had enough people tell me tips that a lot of them don't feel natural. I just want to have a conversation and have the conversation feel like it's just two people catching up. So it's don't follow every play in the playbook. Understand what's going on, listen and understand, and in the call on your terms, and as you would with a friend or a colleague. It doesn't have to be formulaic every time.
What do you dislike about other salespeople?
Well, I guess similar to my last answer, there's often a formula, right?
Yeah.
And I think the formula can work, can get you to a certain level. But I think getting to the next level just requires, a lot more empathy and listening and understanding than what's mentioned in this proverbial playbook. I keep talking about.
Yeah.
I also think there are a lot of people out there who love to, tell you what to do and have lots of ideas on what you should be doing, but don't often do it themselves or put in the work themselves. So that's something we really pride ourselves on is do good work, and more good work will come to you. And don't be so caught up on perfect process and perfect playbooks and things like that.
And finally, how do you keep in contact / build relationships with prospects without being too salesy?
For us, the answer is largely or the question is more about partners than it is prospects. As I mentioned before, we don't have a long pipeline of prospects, and maybe it's because I don't know how to do this. To answer your question with prospects, but we've been largely a digital company. We were launched just before COVID. Everything's pretty much done remotely, and so I haven't sought a lot of personal relationships with prospects. But with partners, we've tried to understand their problems, kind of day-to-day problems, and that goes from people on the partnership team, on their product team, on the sales side, and understand what those problems are and figure out what our solutions are that can help them. So it's often just having conversations, checking in. It's not salesy for us because it's partnerships. So it kind of opens that door up to be a little more open and vulnerable, and nobody thinks the other is directly selling to them, even though there is some of that happening on both sides.
Cool. Well, thank you so much. This podcast was set to record until the half hour, so we are extremely punctual. Thank you so much for your time today, Henry. Any final words, comments?
Just stuff that I like. I mean, the product stuff, enjoying sales because it teaches you about your product. I think that's so great to hear. It's not heard often enough. I think then, especially when, you're going into a new market and people don't want to do sales, but they want to go and test out this thing. Like, it's such a lost opportunity, right? So that really resonates hard. The partnership part is something that we've been talking just every day about internally at the moment, because ultimately, if you're running that playbook, which is relationship based, you might as well invest in the relationships that can give you the greatest outcome, right? And we call them multipliers, but it's hard to invest the level of relationship you need to on a prospect level. Much easier to do it on a partner level. So just lots of stuff that resonates really hard.
Cool.
Yeah, thank you. No, I think we're uniquely positioned with partners relative to other industries that give us an interesting opportunity here for sure.
Cool. Thanks, Will. Really good to have you on the show. Hopefully catch up with you in person soon.
Yeah, great to see you both. Thank you.